It would kind of help if I had my microphone on. Let's try that again. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's weekend show. Oh, there it is. That was a brutal start. Anyway, at least we're live. We're doing it. YouTube's doing it. So, yeah, I don't have you running the show, Kevin. So, it's like, oh, train wreck, train wreck. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday. Today is the 29th of September. And actually interesting here in Vancouver. Wow, the usually September's a pretty good month. And my son's birthday is on the 26th. And man, the weather just turned about the first or second week of September, and it feels like fall is here. Shane and I were wandering around the streets of Vancouver at like 2 o'clock in the morning last night, having fun. Had a nice, really enjoyable time with a couple TRI OGers last night locally. So I might sound a little bit hoarse here this morning, but we're in the saddle, ready to rock the Broiler Chicken Show. So let's do this thing. General reminder, if you are in the lounge here on the Hangout, could you kindly throw yourself on mute? I will go through and help you if I see that you aren't on mute, and don't take it personally. Juan, I'm going to have to mute you there, Slick. All right, and I'm just going to go through and do this very quickly. Just give me a second. Don't take personal offense. It's just we sort of need everything else. I'll tickety-boo here. Actually, it's interesting. Okay, well, I guess we'll do that, and hopefully no more people in the penalty box. All right. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Frivolity. Primary purpose of this weekend show is I really want to give the level oneers the opportunity to ask follow-up questions. And also, too, maybe we'll go through like the Twitter feed just to try and explain some of my crazy thinking through the week. And we can, give a BTC crypto update along the way. I think the message has been fairly clear. Mr. Gann owns this market. And I gotta say, like I said, I was having dinner with a couple OGs last night, and one of them was doggedly bearish, persistently so. Everybody around him was saying, "Oh, you got to get long. You got to buy. Crypto's going to 200,000, 300,000. Don't miss the boat." And he was patient, and he was disciplined, and he stuck to his plan, and he got paid. So congratulations, Andrew. Shows just consummate professional. And if anything, that's sort of what we want to do at TRI is, Brian trades. Brian's a trader. I trade my accounts. I make money. I lose money. I mean, it's just the way it goes. But really at TRI, what we want to do is we want to empower you so that you yourself can become that awesome trader that you've always dreamed of being, rather than just listening to some clown spouting their opinion. And you just sitting there going, I don't know, this guy says buy, so I might as well buy, and boom, then it works against you, and you're like, well, now I'm back at square one. So if anything, Andrew is exactly why we taught the school program, and watching these people day in, day out in the lounge, it's beautiful, it's fantastic, and in a weird sort of way, it actually is awesome for me because now I have this huge pool of people that are all searching. And there was one stock that was really close to breaking out. It hasn't broken out yet, but a site member brought it to my attention. I've got it on my watch list that if it breaks out, I'm so buying it. But it's just sort of sitting there waiting. And just like I said a second ago, the site is just a repository of just awesome trade ideas daily. It's so great. So fantastic to see people doing well with this information. It makes me super happy. Level oneers. I don't know where the best place to do this is, but I would like you guys to ask your questions. The question is, where should we best do this? Do you want to? You guys want to? You can post in here. I see Peter, you posted. Casper, you posted. Although I've got about 3 or 4 different chat boxes running. Probably I've got the lounge chat room up and running, so that's just sort of sitting there, and then I'll sort of touch base with the YouTube chat room as well. I see Andreas is there, Rocker, Daniel, do yourself a favor, everybody. And actually, these two brothers, they just work fucking awesome together. I call the Ventura Boulevard connection. Although Ventura Boulevard is probably nowhere near Ventura. But, and I actually see Daniel tweeting away here. I would do yourself a favor and follow this guy, man. He is so good. He and his brother are they're just the best, watching these two in action. And actually, they were in the lounge posting these charts. And I don't know whether I'll talk about it later on. But they're all bullish of gold in here, which is so cool. But I don't know whether I actually... got your tweet. There he is, Daniel Riviera. I don't know, where are you? Where are you, Daniel? Anyway, this guy is just such an OG. There he is. Oh, it's beautiful watching you in action on a daily basis, Daniel. Just absolutely beautiful. If I can, do yourself a favor, Strange Light 77. Follow this guy. Oh, he's just the shit. So, so proud of you, Daniel. Just another TRIer, just like I was saying about Andrew there earlier. These guys, they learn their craft and they just become the consummate professionals. It's so beautiful to watch them. So way to go, Daniel. See you over there. I hope you're not blushing. Yeah. Yeah. And you're doing it. That's the key. Is I can show you the path, but you got to walk the path, right? Okay. So. Level oneer. Is anybody in the actual hangout here that's a level oneer? Tell me how class went today. Do you feel like you're having your brain fried? Peter, you're in the level 1 program, aren't you? Somebody say something. Yes. All right. Do you have any follow-up questions? I mean, that's hey, there he is. John M says all good. All right. Pascal, you're level 1. I mean, did you guys get blown away by all that strategic planning stuff? And actually, it was really cool. Like, I was going through the Twitter feed and just reviewing my Jupiter-Saturn crosses and the fear-greed cycles and stuff. I think actually I spent a lot of time last week talking about this. But Shane and I were sitting at the computer last night. And the newest study that just is absolutely going to blow your mind away. This is the 17.5-year fear greed cycles. But last night we put on his computer Pluto Saturn crosses. And what's so cool is that there's actually a bullish Pluto Saturn cross coming up the beginning of January. And every time Pluto and Saturn cross, the stock market goes absolutely insanely bullish. So I'm not sure what the fuck's going to happen here down the road, but be sure to watch out for that. And actually, I posted it on the site, but I guess he's still recovering from last night. I don't even know if Shane got home all right, but he actually walked me home last night. But we did the Saturn. So if you want some fun, if you're into the astrology and stuff, WD Gann and all that, do yourself a favor and pull up like an S&P 500 chart and mark out every time Pluto and Saturn cross. It's so cool. So we got that coming down the pike, so be sure to watch out for that in the weeks ahead. I'm not seeing any question. John says brain is defo getting fried. Yeah, well, it's a big week of learning information for you guys, no doubt. I did see. That's good. All right, Peter, good. Casper says I'm in level 1. Class today was awesome. Well, that's good. Learned a lot. I was not able to attend the first week, but I will definitely make sure to attend going forward. Grim really knows his stuff. Yep. And shout out to Grim. Nice to see that he's back on the mend, from the mend. And sounding like he's getting over his cold. He was really laid up there last week. So nice to hear that the Wookiee is getting settled back in with you guys. So that's good to hear. Where do we begin? I'm not quite sure where to begin. Usually I put these weekend shows out on the Twitter feed, and then I sort of start from there. But I guess we'll just go. Last Sunday was the 22nd, so maybe we'll just sort of start from here, I guess. 22nd. Okay, yeah, so this was last week. I did that as sort of a follow-up from their first class. Thought it was really interesting, like I had said earlier. I do believe that Bitcoin and crypto was sort of this cycle's fear proxy, sort of anti-establishment, Storm 51, all that kind of stuff. And I do find it also interesting now if we actually juxtapose gold and Bitcoin together, digital gold, all that kind of conversation, how the image is starting to look very similar to what the panic peak image was from the last fear cycle apex in 1980. And I think what ends up happening here is we're going to get this sort of seesawing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, as these two assets sort of jockey for position as sort of like the fear asset proxy du jour. And it's this is such a funny sort of commentary on markets and society and stuff. I don't really care. And a lot of people, unfortunately, get really emotionally wrapped up in these stories. You see the gold bugs, the way that they act, right? And they're like insulted by things like Bitcoin. And then conversely, Bitcoin and its community looks at the gold market as with a bit of disdain. I'm not the type of person to really care one way or the other. All I want to do is I just want to make money, right? So, if one's moving up and the other's moving down, I want to be long the one that's moving up and short the one that's moving down. And I thought it was just an interesting commentary on this, because I still think that we're sort of living in this kind of world where the fear asset proxies are going to jockey back and forth, but they are going through these long-term sort of cyclical pivots. For a while now, Bitcoin's been sort of taking advantage of gold, but it seems to me that with the most recent break here in price, and this was, as I had sort of started the broadcast off today, this was sort of a theme that we're kicking around the site right now. This is Bitcoin versus gold, and you can clearly see the W's coming in place. And really, all you people watching on YouTube, just if you're going to learn one thing, it's W's are bullish, M's are bearish. And in this particular case, you can see the repeated higher lows and higher highs, and there goes the gold relative to Bitcoin. Is this a function that gold is so much more valuable than Bitcoin, or is it a function that Bitcoin has become less value versus gold? That's another conversation altogether. But the long and short of it here is those people that were hunting these W's and taking this trade, well, they're getting paid, so way to go. Oh, hey, Seward. Don't free Brian? What does that mean? uh, because John said brain is definitely getting fried. Okay, I see. Hi, Stuart. Anyway, nice to see you, bud. And I did notice on the site, and and actually, this is a cool second commentary too. I got a funny feeling that the altcoin market is basically washed out. It's done. Um, hopes and dreams of previous cycles, FOMO buys up top. A lot of those people, their hearts are completely broken, which is really sad unto itself. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And I'm starting to see little anecdotal pieces of evidence that the altcoins that they're ready for their next cycle. So I just wanted to comment that I really wanted us to try and take advantage, and Sjord is our CTO, take advantage of this developer cycle to try and get our sort of site running and stuff. And one of the sort of ways that I'll know that our site, we're all fully ready to go for the next cycle, is all of this page will be fully populated. And I see our breadth data is coming back online, which is super sexy. And we've been sort of calling and looking for cycle pivot up here the end of September, and the breadth data seems to be correlating with that nicely. And I also did a study of sort of correlation of the Russell 2000 and the GBTC for one of these YouTube videos that I did last week or a week or two ago. And it was really interesting. I'm not quite sure how to interpret it, but that was a really interesting study. I see a lot of correlation between the junior stock market and things like crypto and Bitcoin and stuff. So it feels as though we're in sort of like that risk off kind of environment, but great to see that we're starting to see data fields getting populated again on our site. So we're taking advantage of this developer cycle. But those people that do watch these weekend free shows and our little daily brief recaps, we used to actually do a fairly regularly, at least once every couple weeks, a show with the people at Coinigy, and those OGers that were involved in that project back up at the top of the market, late 2017, early 2018, they actually disappeared. Especially some of the fundamental analysts that we used to have on there. Clearly, they got out and liquidated, and they just sort of vanished. And as a result, that sort of Coinigy show kind of just died on the vine. And now all of a sudden, as sort of like I said a few minutes ago, I'm starting to see signs of a bottom in altcoin land. And lo and behold, all the OGers are starting to slowly perk up and, hey, let's do a Coinigy show again. Hey, why don't we do this? Hey, why don't we do? I haven't done one of these in a while. So and I'm also seeing on social media, there are characters in this space. If you follow crypto Twitter and stuff like that, there are some characters that sort of, again, they kind of just disappeared there at the top of the market. And now they're starting to come back on crypto Twitter and start chattering again. So I'm starting to see more and more anecdotal evidence that the developer cycle is sort of playing itself out. It's been, ironically enough, like if you're a little old lady, and actually this would be a really good question for even like the cryptoverse, and I've said it repeatedly, but let's throw this question out on YouTube, and actually why don't you answer it in a comment, so then that way we can actually get some comments here. But if Goldman Sachs is going to go to their little old ladies and say, we think you should buy this, but they wouldn't be talking like little old ladies. They'd be, we think you should buy this. What is on all of their marketing material? as for the time horizon when they should be invested in this asset. If they were going to go to like a little old lady and say, "Oh, we think you should buy this asset." Anybody? Yeah, thank you, Kevin. But you answered here in the Hangout, so that's cool. And you're OG, so I don't want you answering on YouTube anyway. You already know the answers. But anybody on YouTube, I see there's 30, 40 people over there watching this. Does anybody on YouTube know what the typical marketing material, every single piece of material that goes out has this time horizon on every single piece of marketing material that goes out? Hey, Chris got it. Way to go, Chris. Good job. Either you guys over on YouTube are just ignoring me, or maybe you just didn't know the answer. But the answer is that every single piece of marketing material goes out, and everything right across the top says you have an investment time horizon of 3 to 5 years. So from that perspective, how long has this crypto bear actually been? Well, Andre, you already just got some value out of watching this free show. Write that down. Take a screenshot. Well, that's good, Casey. I appreciate that. That's the thing is because YouTube shows your name and the Bubble Baby picture, I recognize you anywhere. But anyway, so the point being that we are now, 20 months into this, horrific bear. And trust me, it hasn't been fun at all. But ironically enough, from that 3 to 5 year little old lady time horizon perspective, we're not even halfway through the investment window. And like I said, all the OG are slowly starting to come back. I get the funny feeling, we're almost done this nightmare in altcoin land. And also, too, we're seeing lots of anecdotal evidence of, Trex is trying to clean itself up. They're, I noticed that the delisting statements, most of the positions, and remember, I own like almost everything in crypto. Most of their positions that they're reporting that they're delisting their coins, I've already either liquidated or they're moved them to different exchanges and stuff. So I can see that the inertia of that is slowly winding down too. But at the same time too, ultimately finding that bottom is a process, and it's a pain in the butt. The comments that I've been making recently about things like altcoins, and probably the best way to see that is if we go over to where's the best way to do this? If we go over to our trend following models and we pull up crypto, I think, kind of you've seen it in Bitcoin. It's enjoyed a pretty nice run of it here lately. But these moving averages is really simple stuff. It's slow. It's painful sometimes. But, these are weekly price charts. And when these turn up in earnest, then we know that we're in the bull. And I think, Bitcoin rally this past spring, the Litecoin rally into its halving event, hopefully you can see that. But as it stands right now, what we're getting is a lot of sort of, we had some really nice rallies off the bottoms of ranges, and we talked a little bit about fractals and stuff that you could trade. We had some interesting little setups that came in here just recently on things like Litecoin and things like Bitcoin or Ethereum. But as you can see, the rallies themselves just did nothing more than just come right back into moving average resistance, and then a lot of them just stalled out on that event. And that's very typical of sort of trying to find the bottom, right? We'd call that a V bottom off of these higher time frames. Yes, it's a fractal. Daily charts have W's and stuff, but, a lot of times we see they just rally right up into resistance and then just get smacked right back down. And that's sort of the kind of market state that I think we're in right now. But at the same time, too, I mean, if you look at any of these names, let's look at Cripple. I mean, are we closer to the bottom or are we closer to the top? This process might take some time, and I think I showed you guys like years ago. I had this funny little coin, and I don't know whether I don't think we can see it on here, but I had on this little coin called Verge. And let's see if we can pull it up here, because I think it's a really excellent example. What's Verge's symbol? Anybody remember? XVGA. We have to go to a place that has a old chart data. I don't know whether this will even go back far enough. Yeah, well, I mean, it's different, but hopefully you see that, again, this is a weekly price chart. It took, in this particular case, are we closer to the top than the bottom? We're at the bottom, but you can see in this particular case, it took from the bottom to the breakout, it took almost a year, where we could just bang back and forth, come back down against the lows, then rally up against the highs, and kind of idea. And then that set up this insanity. So my hunch is that altcoins are going through sort of this period right now. If you can sneak in off of fractals and stuff and trade these things and try and bang out doubles to get free positions, awesome, great. But if we did like moving average studies and stuff like that, it would probably take this long for the moving averages to start turning back up in earnest. I don't know whether this would have enough data to show it, but how am I going to do this? Maybe we had one site student who actually put together this totally awesome script that has all these moving averages all together. It's just a question of where the hell is it? TRIs, MAs, this might be it. Let's see what we got here. Okay, well, we can't really see the cloud that well. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go like this, and go like this, and go like this, and go like this, and I guess we can do Mr. Sun's coin. And we'll go like that, and of course this is relative to Bitcoin, so it's slightly different, but nonetheless, yeah, okay, so this is what I kind of wanted to show you guys. Was, we don't have that much data here, so it's kind of tough to work with, but, sort of banging up off of the bottoms, running into moving average resistance, then having to work down, and then ultimately turning back up. And sort of this is the sign that we'll know that we're pretty close to bottoms. When we bust up, the moving averages all turn positive, then we come back down into sort of bullish moving average stances, and then turn back up, and away we go. So I kind of think that we're still sort of in this kind of phase where rallies into moving average resistance are exactly that, they're resistance, but the trend hasn't quite turned up just as of yet. So, if we go back, oh yeah, there it is. No, it isn't. Where the hell's Tron? There we go. So you can kind of see that same sort of thing. We turned back up. Are we ready to rock and roll? We came back down and tested the moving average support and then lost it, and then that turned back into resistance. Just sort of using this particular coin as a proxy. And so now, we might get inside bars that paint rallies, but, we should expect, moving average resistance. In the short term right now, that's sort of that dead cat bounce kind of conversation. So that's what I'm seeing across the board here, is lots of dead cat bounces into bearish, moving average stances, and those dead cat bounces got rejected. at the moving average apexes, if you will. So, like I said, getting lots of sort of anecdotal evidence from the OGers that they're starting to get back interested. Keep in mind that Dogecoin people, they're going to have their Dogecoin next summer, so they're going to want to get paid. So it wouldn't surprise me. I think Doge is an excellent sort of like grassroots kind of altcoin kind of story. I'm hearing more people getting interested in that name. And guys want to get the Coinigy shows back up and running. They're starting to come back, and crypto OGers are starting to come back on Twitter and stuff. So I'm getting the anecdotal evidence that we're closer to the bottom than the top. So I think that's on balance is a generally good sign. But we still, and here's the half of the problem here is that seasonally we're in a very, very difficult time period for crypto. There are years that we can find when crypto does relatively well in the fall, but usually heading into the end of the year, I've noticed that crypto is kind of heavy. And Ethereum in particular, I've noticed over the years, loves to sort of bottom and wash itself out heading into the end of the year, and usually bottoms right at the beginning of the new year. So, over the next month or two, am I really expecting big moves up out of this space? Not really. But could we be setting the groundwork for a very typical seasonal rally? Buy when it snows, sell when it goes? Absolutely. If you can think about that, absolutely, we are probably being set up with a half-decent buy window through the late fall here. It's just that I think we're still a little bit early to be thinking about next bulls just yet. Somebody over there on Bitcoin's like, yeah, we need to look at Bitcoin. Quit talking about altcoins. Just look at Bitcoin. Interesting enough with Bitcoin, we've been squawking about Mr. Gann here ad nauseum. Hey there, Shane. You made it. He's alive. Actually, you know what? While Shane gets settled in, Shane, can you find that Saturn chart? I got to show this to these people. It's so cool. I'm going to fill my coffee up. So, Shane, find that chart. I'll be right back. Okay. All right, it's awfully tough to talk without a beverage. So we got Shane in the house here, so hopefully Shane can show us that Pluto Saturn. And I still don't understand the significance of Pluto. But the charts, they speak, right? And that's the only thing that matters is, holy crap, look at the data. All right, so Shane is... and I don't know. Maybe we should keep this in-house and just talk about it on the Broiler Chicken Show. I don't know whether we want to show this publicly, but man, that was a cool study that we did last night. Let's see if I can just show you this here. I'm not even quite sure what's going to load. Hopefully, it's not a picture of a naked lady. This chart layout cannot be opened. All right, well, to hell with you. So maybe we'll work on that over the next few days. It's no big deal, Shane. It's just so impressed, and it's good to see that you made it here this morning. So, just referring back to that sort of bigger picture kind of idea. you know, I don't necessarily suggest that you take trades off of this kind of data. I think it's more just sort of like a roadmap. It's freaky how Mr. Gann's sort of idea that price and time itself moves in proportional conjunction. And we were sitting there basically for 2 or 3 months going, well, theoretically we should get a 50% correction down to this 8,500 just to make Mr. Gann happy. And it should come in sometime around the end of September, beginning of October. And sure enough, within a week, boink, that level was finally traded to. It was interesting, too, that the sort of catalyst that drove off the break was on a fairly sizable sell. So I'm not quite sure if this is sort of the cart pushing the horse or the horse pushing the cart. But it was really interesting to see that very large block was the sort of reason that they justified the price dumping the way that it did. And as you can sort of see on this image here, I don't really know exactly, I mean, nobody does, right? Exactly where the bottom will be on this particular cycle. We might have to dip further down. It's tough to say. But interestingly enough, from a Gann perspective, once sort of the flush out has been done here, ironically enough, I actually wouldn't be surprised if over the next couple months we have a nice dead cat bounce that brings us sort of back up to flirt with this 10,000 level from the other side, right? So you notice that, candle body levels, Brian loves those as trade location. If I was an institution and I wanted to get short Bitcoin, I can't really sell here. I have to actually wait for the counter turn rally to bring it back down up to structural levels, and then I'll be selling this up move. That's usually how institutions like to get filled in size. So, I wouldn't be surprised, and this is, like I did comment in sort of public videos and stuff like late last week. We did have some people on the site that were painting shorter time frame setups that were looking for continuation down into Mountain Man. That could very easily happen. I don't see why it couldn't. I would just be, leery about hunting shorts here. Is this such like the best trade location? And it almost feels like it's sort of like a coin toss, whether we rally back up into sort of resistance areas up above, or we dip down into Mountain Man. So I think like the statistical odds of taking a trade here, it's kind of iffy trade location. So I did notice, and I was sort of tertiary watching the market through the corner of my eye through the weekend. I noticed that the market, of course, dumped. And then, those continuation patterns, they seem to set themselves up fairly well, but you can see, boom, blasted out. And then you might even argue that there was another one off of here, sort of there to there. And we'll go trade setup. You can see how this is one top, two tops. Then we kind of came down, not really a third top. Flirted with that 25 bot level, and then the market went up and broke that again. And what I also noticed too was the break of this top was a really weird candle. I don't know whether you guys were watching this yesterday, but really bizarre, where they just ratcheted the price up. And I looked out of the corner of my eye and I was like, whoa, what the fuck's going on there? And it almost smelled like an engineered stop run. Because instantly, once that move was done, then the market just peeled right back down. So something screwy happened in the market about, I guess that's about 3:30 or so yesterday afternoon. So I don't know whether, all you guys that are like super Liquidity for it could be, you know, and then we went after the stops kind of thing. That's what that reminds me of. It's almost like, you know, and is this Arthur Hayes and BitMEX and all that kind of controversy? Is that sort of what happened here? OK Coin, was there some effery around that? Probably really, really good lesson for everybody on the sort of power of trendline resistance. And, you know, here's another question for the YouTubers. How do we justify taking a trade on the other side of it? Oh, I just gave you the answer. It's tough to come up with these quiz questions just off the top of your head. If we're going to take a trade on a trend line break, what do we have to see on the other side of the trend line? Kevin, you remember those days? I used to always go, hint, 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 it's probably a question on the final exam. But anyway, there's Matt. Matt, you can only post in 5 paragraph messages. I'm just kidding, Matt. Whenever I say something on Matt and he disagrees, I get this big doctoral dissertation as to why I'm wrong. But anyway, good to see you on the YouTube feed there, Matt, and I'm sure you will let me know exactly what's on your mind here. Chester says W. Very good, Chester. Chester's the only one on the YouTube page that got it. And, you know, here's another fantastic analogy where, you know, maybe you're like rah bull. Okay, I'm going to rock and roll. So on the other side of this trend line, can we please get some sort of W? And you can clearly see here we blasted up through this little mini trend line. And I'm sure a lot of people were like, oh, it's a bull, it's going to the bed, it's going to the bed. And then you wait, and oh, damn, back below. And now the goddamn thing puts in an M right at the trend line and works its way back down. Very frustrating. So, but really good, you know, somebody there on Andre, right? You already got a note earlier for your notes. Well, here's another golden piece of wisdom. Is, you know, don't get suckered into on initial breaks of trend lines taking a trade, because quite often it can be a trap. So really good analogy of that right there. But anyway, the point that I would just make here is, you know, looking at this, it doesn't surprise me that we're getting a lot of chop Vegas in here. Why? Because we're at this really important higher time frame level here. And the market, and I think I've said this in public offerings, so, like my expectation is we actually have to spend some time sort of chopping around this 50% level just to drive everybody crazy. But this is sort of like the magnet of the market right now. And the magnet, and actually I remember I did this before recently and I couldn't find the damn magnet thing. And of course I can't find it again. Damn it, I hate when. Oh, there it is again. So, you know, the magnet itself is almost acting as a wow, come to me, right? And in a weird sort of way, my expectation is that price should just like oscillate around this 8,500 for a bit here. As well, too, something that sort of jumps out at me is this is going to be a really big fight level. You know, like our general thesis about sort of price action is if we ever want to sort of figure out where support is on a chart, and especially if we look at like a daily chart, you probably see this a lot better. We'll zoom this out to a daily. What we really want to do, like if we're going through this sort of face rip phase here in any of these, right, is if we start melting back down and you're like, where's support? You know, the level tours have just done this. This is this whole concept of horizontal support and resistance. So on the daily chart, This is we call it tricking out our charts for the level tours, or just going through this. We might just draw a whole bunch of these support and resistance lines. Remember, it's the big boys that put tops and bottoms in the market. And yes, we'd like to, as the public, we'd like to think that we have a lot of purchasing power and we can control the fates of markets. But, in reality, what I've found over the years, and especially now that Bitcoin's sort of grown up, is it's the big boys that actually put these bottoms in the market. Market was heading down here and somebody said, no, enough of down, you go up now. And you can only really see these, I call them institutional fingerprints. You can only really see them after the fact. When we're going through the actual down move here, you won't know that that's what's going on. But after the fact, when the market starts ripping up here, we can look back and say, okay, where is actual buying demand? And remember, the point at which the market stops going down and starts going up is quite literally the point where demand overwhelms supply. So these, and I used to work with this prop firm guy, he'd say these are the only points that really matter on the chart. Everything else is just bullshit. The point at which, here, the market started to go down. Somebody said, nope, enough of you going down. I want to buy this thing. And it stopped going down and it started going back up. This is an incredibly important reference point for us. And notice, these key lows here against this previous high, same sort of thing. In this case, this is where supply overwhelmed demand. So this little zone in here, this is the only point on the chart that's actually of any relevance to a lot of sort of, higher time frame, killer prop trader kind of guys. And notice, of course, the dips into here, they were bought up. So, on the fact, these levels can only be tested so many times. And then, after that sort of resolution, we go down to the next level. So, looking at this chart, and this is sort of what jumped out at me right here, right now, is, these are the levels that the smart money said, no more down, you go up now. And, of course, everybody should look at this and go, gee whiz, that's one of those W's that Beamish guy loves to see in the market, right? There's your trade level right there. And then, great commentary on trend line breaks. There's a nice little W following the trend line break. But the point being that when we're coming down, especially on this side, and you're like, okay, where the hell is this thing going to find support? This is this whole sort of look left kind of conversation. So when we get down into these areas, our job is to look left and say, okay, where did the last time the supply and demand dynamic change in the buyer's favor, right? And that's against all these lows. So, hunting new short setups down here, considering those 50% rule kind of conversation, and WD GAN and sort of, where are sort of magnets, and then, this weekly chart, talk about a huge, pivot point. Where did previous demand overwhelm supply? It really shouldn't surprise us that there should be a pretty big fight down in here. Now, sometimes you can just get quick zip, right? And really, I might even argue that this rally up top was exactly that. It was one of those quick zips, right? Where the market just had just a massive head of steam and it zipped up into Mountain Man and, of course, quickly melted away from that. Could we have seen that kind of situation where she just zips down into Mountain Man and then jackknifes higher? Sure, that could happen. But I would just simply say, hunting new short setups down here, the probability of this sort of FU kind of moves and you getting washed out in these crazy ass sort of, one candle, two candle kind of action that just drives you crazy. Where the hell did that damn chart go? Yeah, I guess here. This to me, it doesn't surprise me. This is tough trading down in here. to be hunting new shorts, considering what we just talked about with 50% rolls and that those institutional fingerprints all down against these lows and stuff like that. So I can completely understand. Like when I look at this chart, I'm not going to be thinking about shorting here. And if anything, what I'm actually looking for is I'm looking for that counter trend rally that comes back and kisses all these sort of candle bodies from the underside. So that's sort of my perception here over the short term. I don't have enough anecdotal evidence off of things like the 4 hour for me to think that the turn is in just yet. I suppose if we take this chart now down to 4 hour, and we can even, just off the dailies, what do the dailies look like? Do we have any signs of a bottom yet? Nothing in volume. The bears have woken up to a certain degree. They might be slowly falling back asleep here. We'll watch for that. Raw price momentum right now. We just had this new M confirm on momentum. So there certainly isn't anything to get excited about on the long side there. Are we overbought or oversold? No. Willie's sitting at minus 74. When he gets to minus 80, then we can start thinking about this market being officially oversold. So we're not there yet either. And, if we look at things like RSI trends, I do like the fact that this market is now, from an RSI perspective, it is pretty oversold. Very rarely do you get readings on RSI down below 30. So here we are in the 20s. So that's pretty oversold. But at the same time, too, if we just draw very simple trend lines off of RSI studies, you can clearly see the bear is in control here. So there's no real reason to be getting overly optimistic. And interestingly enough, from like sort of a trading perspective, what I actually like to see is 2 W's here on the RSI for me to actually get bullish. I'd want to see, and we can do them like that, and that guy's way up there. So at some point we're going to get some sort of test of that down the road, but that'll be a while. So for now. Something along those lines. So we don't even have 1 W here yet. But what I'd actually like to see is sort of like a nice W that breaks that trend line. And then if I get another W on the other side of that. So 1 W breaks the bear inertia. And then the second W actually sets up sort of your trade signal. So RSI is still a long way away from issuing buy signals, if you will. But at the same time, too, great to see that RSI is technically it is oversold, and it doesn't like to stay here very long, which in itself could maybe even help with that sort of idea of that snapback rally up against the neckline resistance on the weekly charts, just to get RSI out of this oversold condition. That wouldn't surprise me. But buy signals per se, no, there's nothing anywhere in sight. If probably to try and help see a turn here, like I said, dailies, there's nothing there yet. But, maybe if we go down to, like, say, a swing trader's perspective, 4 hour, do we have anything to work with here just yet? Simple answer, nope. No divergences on MACD yet. If anything, we probably want to see some sort of probe against these lows. Maybe that's what takes us into that mountain man. I don't know, to create some sort of divergence, but there's just nothing there just yet. And if anything, what I'm kind of worried about is we sort of do one of these or even one of these. where we climb back up. Notice that rally there is that move. This rally here is this move. It's not really on a divergence, so that means that when things sort of settle down, we got to roll back over and come back down and test the lows. When this is done, roll over, come back down, test the lows. So you can see we're in that process now. If this thing rolls over, then we come back down, test the lows. So, we just don't have any sort of reasons to get too bullish just as of yet. So, in a weird sort of way, and it's a pain in the butt, I know. If anything, I'm almost thinking, when I look at this, I'm thinking extensions. So if we go, say, like this high down to this low, and then we draw some extensions off of that. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about here. So good old 1.618, or what they call the golden ratio, sitting here at about 7,500. And 200%, and this is sort of Brian's parking garage thesis, is still sitting down there at, and that's at 6,300 if the market just falls right apart. I'd have to be thinking right now that that ultimately, maybe on a move into sort of that 1.618, that sort of creates the divergence that sort of starts us finding a bottom here. This is going to take some time, no doubt about it. We've done a lot of technical damage off of the weekly charts, no doubt. So as we sort of showed off the daily charts, there's nothing. Even off 4-hour charts, there's nothing. We're still in correction mode. It's just, I guess the fundamental problem I have is this really such a good place to be hunting new trade setups? And I don't think so. So the way that I'm sort of framing this is just simply you're too late to be a seller, right? And inside bars off of weekly charts. You heard Brian squawking about it, put out lots of tweets. If I was trading professionally, let's see if I can show you. Yeah, I had it right here. I mean, fuck, it just makes you so sick to your stomach. We talked about the diamond pattern right in here. In my last short setup, I got flushed out at a small profit, but nonetheless, hop back off on the sidelines. Then instantly inside bar reversal comes in, and the market just pukes out. And it's a trader's life. I mean, get used to it. This is what's going to happen in your trading experience. You just got to ride with the punches. But anyway, the point here is, I think there was actually a pretty good little sell signal that came in there at on the fail, and that was of 10,056.30 here over on Coinbase. Came down into AB equals CD targets, as I said. Lots of references to TRIOGers taking profits, being patient, waiting for these levels. So I think you're too late to be a seller. But at the same time, too, we just don't have enough anecdotal evidence off of things like swing trade charts for us to call bottoms here. But this is going to be chop, 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 chop Vegas. And the reason why new shorts, I think, are having trouble is this isn't really the best trade location. If anything, what I really, as I said just a moment ago, I mean, you can see like the weekly price charts, that's sort of the line in the sand. What I'd like to see for sort of new trade setups is maybe even come and kiss the bottom of value. What do you think the odds are that, and actually this might be an interesting tell as to where the bottom is. But if we just do like a reload zone off of that range, yeah, that's what I was afraid of. So notice 1.618, if we do ultimately bottom at that level, notice how Mountain Man is basically that original breakdown level, and it is the bottom of value. So I would be sort of inclined to think that, maybe there's one more FU lower here that sets up the divergence that maybe starts carving out W's on things like RSIs. And that sets up the counter trend rally for a move back up into reload zones here. Then I'd also add too, like I said earlier, and this is sort of off crypto, but I'd also add too that, seasonally, seasonally, of course, they don't call it the fall for nothing. But, risk on, risk off, that kind of conversation. We just finished our rally cycle, and that's what this pivot here. What I find interesting about this is you can see in this cycle, yes, this was basically a top, but the market actually made new highs here and then dumped into this cycle bottom. This cycle, it happened to be exactly right on. It looks like this cycle, we were actually maybe about a week early. I like to put myself on sort of a dollar cost averaging program when I'm buying sort of put insurance. And so here is a really interesting example where actually being a week or two early actually paid off in this case. But I'm not really commenting about this particular trade, as I'm more sort of talking about sort of what is sort of risk on, risk off going to look like for the next month. And unfortunately, I got to say, guys, I mean, this to me feels like a very risk on, off type of environment. And then I said earlier that I think there's a lot of correlation between things like crypto and especially altcoins, venture capital risk, and the Russell 2000, which is sort of the small cap, penny stock sort of market. And notice this very polite inside bar failure reversal that fired last week and actually fired at the beginning of this week. So, could we go through a couple weeks of malaise here in stock market land as things like seasonal windows, or let's call this cycle windows, not seasonal. You can, and it's so cool. Like on the public broadcast that I do through the week, I just sort of tell everybody, what are you supposed to think if you ever see the market smiling at you, right? And of course, we got a whole bunch of these smiles. Boom, boom, boom. Well, here we are. I mean, it's just sitting there. Yeah, nobody should be shocked if we pull up this chart a week or two from now and we find that the stock market is working its way lower here. That shouldn't surprise anybody. With that said, can crypto really rally in the face of that? And I get the impression, I know it's unpopular, and I know there's one gentleman watching this video that will argue this to the death with me. But I do feel as though crypto and this whole sort of correlation of risk assets, I think Bitcoin is part of this risk on conversation. And if anything, in a weird sort of way, I actually think that crypto and Bitcoin was almost like a leader in this particular cycle pullback. We'll see how it goes. Only time will tell. And also too, I talked lots about the brutal manipulation of the oil market there through that contract expiry. Notice how, oh gee whiz, the world isn't going to war now over this drone strike, which technically you could argue if you drove like 20 airplanes into a foreign country and started bombing the country's infrastructure with your 20, 30 planes. I mean, how many planes were involved in Pearl Harbor? I mean, it wasn't that many. It was maybe like 100 planes. So all of a sudden, like Pearl Harbor, you can justify a global war. But this case, it just mysteriously vanished. The whole conversation has just gone right off the table. Seems a little suspicious. But, go back and watch all those videos and stuff. But in essence, that drone strike against Saudi Arabia caused this. A whole bunch of put options. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of put options, all mysteriously expired worthless right on this event. And then on the other side, oil continues its move in the original direction. Sounds a bit suspicious. I don't know if anybody's got their tinfoil hats, but maybe I should throw mine on right now. So put it all together, right? I guess where I'm trying to go with all this is I think, we're too late to be sellers and still probably too early to be buyers. If we talk about like the altcoin carnage, these bottoms, like the Litecoin double bottom, it failed and the double bottom was broken. The Ethereum double bottom, at the very least, in this particular setup, we were told to sort of move stops to scratch. So on that event, you sort of got liquidated at scratch. But its bottom was broken. And I do see that we had a whole bunch of sort of little names that were all trying to turn up. We sort of talked about this, like weekly fractals, and most of them got broken. So I don't really see any sort of justification to be like too rah-rah bull in the face of these failures. I will mention that through this particular cycle, I strapped on a little crypto stock, and I was reporting that I would stay in this stock as long as this double bottom held, and you can see it was broken. And if anything, this is such a classic analogy of a trader's life. I was right in the middle of teaching a class, like Friday afternoon. It was like, I start the class at about 11 o'clock and we go through to market close. And politely at right about noon, all hell broke loose on my screen and alarms are going off right, left, and center. And I had to go in and close out a trade right in the middle of class. And so all the, I think it was our level 2 class, everybody got to see how Brian liquidated a losing trade. Yeah, way to go, Brian. But, live by the sword, die by the sword. Are you going to do what you say you were going to do? I said I was going to buy this double bottom. I bought it. I said I was going to risk to a break of this W. That W was broken. And I walked away. And I took my loss. And next bus in 10 minutes. It's a trader's life. So the point that I would just make here is, do we have any justification to be hunting longs here now? No, nothing. Like we looked at on that Bitcoin chart there just a moment ago, off of the dailies, is there any justification for me to be hunting longs right now? And the answer is no. So we're just gonna have to cool our jets. I like to follow the stocks. I think they're excellent leading indicators for any asset. And there's one company in particular that I think has got a pretty good fundamental reputation as a miner. And I've been watching this guy all the way along here. Technically, bot setups are still alive because 66 hasn't been taken out. But you can clearly see everybody should look at this and go, well, I see one letter of the alphabet jumping out at me. Up, down, up, see you later. And the worst part about this is actually if we drill out to things like a weekly chart, you can actually see those M's off of weekly charts. So, put it all together, that's not the best kind of message we want to be hearing about investing in crypto right now. This happens to be one. There's another one, Novogratz. Does anybody ever even remember Novogratz anymore? Mike Novogratz. He was all the rage through the Bitcoin top, and everybody loved him. But, you look at this chart, and is there any letters of the alphabet that are jumping out at us here? All right, up, down, up, see you later. So the fact that Novogratz's stock, and actually Novogratz's stock now has gone beyond 66, so we can't even consider bots here anymore. The bot is off the table. So, the crypto stocks, I just showed you 3. One of them just broke a recent W. 2 of them actually have just painted new weekly M's. It's just not a hell of a lot to do here, folks. Sorry. I mean, I want to report that, hey, man, this is a rip-roaring bull. We're all going to get rich. Buy your Lambos. But it's just not there, right? So you got to call a spade a spade. And if anything, what I've sort of talked about, kind of like Litecoin and Ethereum is, it's in my opinion, the difference between a professional and an amateur in this space is the professional actually has the professionalism to state that they were wrong, that their thesis was wrong. They have to go into capital preservation mode, and they just have to get out and just publicly say, yeah, you're right, I don't walk on water, I'm just another human, and in this particular case, my thesis was wrong, and I was wrong. That's actually the sign of a pro. It's very difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not easy whatsoever. And of course, what ends up ultimately happening is, the public is always chasing that shiny object, chasing that all-star, that winner. They want to buy their Lambos. They want to hear what they want to hear. And quite often what ends up happening is a trade that was a marginal loser could turn into a real disaster situation if the market just keeps going, and a problem that could have been a relatively small problem can turn into a portfolio breaker if you've taken too much risk and you just don't have the professionalism to stand up and say you were wrong. So, I will simply say here, our thesis about bottoms coming in crypto here, they've been busted. And now we just got to sit and patiently wait for the next setup if you are a bull. And there's nothing for me to do right now here. Sucks. I know you guys all want me to go, oh, go and buy this, you'll make money. Oh, go buy that, you'll make money. But what I see is a lot of technical damage here. Again, simple message. Too late to be a seller. In my opinion, too early to be a buyer. Okay, well, that was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I did want to show you this really cool study, and actually, I don't know whether we did it in here. Do you guys have any of you level oneers still have any questions? I don't see anything being posted. So you guys, Tomcat says, success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. Good point, Tomcat. We used to always say the worst thing that can possibly happen to a new person to trading is a whole bunch of success right away. That's the absolute worst thing that can happen. Because then, market state changes, your setups might stop working, and then you're just like, what the hell? I thought I walked on water. So, right. Shane has given me another one. Did you give me another link there, Shane, or is that the first one that we tried? Because this is such a cool study that we worked on last night. Is he still here? First one. Okay, so what do we got here? Is this going to tell me, sorry, you lose? Survey says, no, you still don't like me, dude. Alright, let's try this one. Survey says, hey, there we go. Alright, so what we did was we plotted on... and I guess, can you move the chart over so we can see that 2015 bottom? Because this was the 2015 bottom, and this was really freaky. Because the Pluto-Saturn crosses, they don't happen very often. But in essence, these are the sort of pivots. And back in 1915... there was a bullish one, and then right about actually when they cross, and then they the exact opposite is like they're exactly on either side of the sun, and they're sort of facing each other. The exact there's a name for that, I forgot, but anyway, we noticed that actually is almost perfect sort of pivot. So this I think speaks to the sort of level oneers is. This is the economic cycle if you have a stable currency, where the currency itself is not messed around with to avoid situations where democratically elected governments get run out of town on a rail. In this world, Mr. Hoover said, look, you invest in the stock market, you take your own risks. I mean, stock market's a risky place. It's a risky asset class. So, ridiculous run up in prices. And, this is kind of like altcoins and crypto. We've had this conversation with you guys. When you see a chart that looks like this, is this sustainable? Is this healthy? Is it natural growth rate? And clearly it wasn't. But fascinating, from cycle beginning to cycle end, you can actually make the argument that this is actually a pretty healthy growth rate. Just this diagonal line. But the midpoint of those planetary cycles almost perfectly coincided, where we took sort of a mirror image and we just took this image and then we just flipped it over and inverted it, and this side of the image almost looks exact carbon copy to this. So really great. And did you zoom that over? Maybe he did. Let's see what we got here. There we go. You can see that cycle. This is what an equity market should look like through its natural cycles. Growth cycle, regression cycle. You finish the cycle slightly higher. There is a positive growth rate to your economy. This cycle, same sort of thing. Notice right at the pivot, right at the midpoint, you can see how the market itself was pivoting right off of that midpoint of that planetary cycle. So the first part of the cycle was just insane bull, very much like this. It never went parabolic like it did through here, so that's a good sign. But notice the second half of the cycle, basically instead of like the wipeout, in this particular case, we just basically went sideways. Why? Well, this was basically, and I suppose was a little bit further along here, but this was when the Americans took themselves off the gold standard and created this fiat currency world that we live in, which basically didn't, and actually Shane and I were doing this where I think we took one cycle, what does having a stable currency look like through sort of the regression part of the cycle? And then what does sacrificing your currency look like on the next cycle? And so what is the difference between having a stable currency and having an unstable currency? And interestingly enough, this next cycle, and you can see, and this is what sort of caught my eye about this study, was if we go back and we look at the interest rate market, and we had one chart where we overlaid the interest rates on this. They say historically that the stock market turned in the spring of 1982, because if you go look at the bond market ended up putting in an important bottom right through that sort of spring of 1982, and that's what launched the stock market higher. But I mean, you tell me, if you just went and bought like $1 worth of stocks right here on this planetary conjunction, how did you do over the next 10-15 years? Not so bad. How about this planetary conjunction? If you just went and bought like one share of the Dow, how did you do? That worked pretty fucking good, eh? And then, sort of like this current cycle, there is sort of the second half of that cycle. It's been chop Vegas, and of course we've had quantitative easing. So this is, again, this kind of conversation. This is your stable currency. This is your currency running balanced budgets but leaving the gold standard. This is now your currency where not only do we've left the gold standard, so there's no sort of base value for this currency, but now central bankers, our beloved 1%, are even taking further steps to dilute the currency to keep this thing moving up. Because if we don't have growth, living in this deficit world that we live in, all hell will break loose. And the worst part about this is, according to Keynesian economics, you're supposed to run deficits when the consumer or the industrial sectors of the economy are in deficit, i.e. they borrowed too much money and they're going through a credit crunch or bankruptcies or whatever. The government should actually step up and spend then to keep the economy going. But during good times, the government should pull back that deficit spending and should actually run surpluses to pay off the debts. And unfortunately, Mr. Trump now is actually perfectly comfortable with the economy theoretically humming along to still continue to have like $1 trillion deficits. So, total emperor's new clothes kind of scenario here. I still think, and this is just Brian and 30 years market participation, that there needs to be a recession before we hit sort of the next growth cycle. But one thing that's sort of jumping out at me that bothers me is, does this base have to look something like this maybe? Coming out of that sort of, Great Depression, post-World War II, into this next expansion phase. I don't know what this has to look like. Historically, we should see a 50% drop in equity prices through recessions. But interestingly enough, a pullback of 50% of this just takes us right back down into these levels, sort of mid point here. But once we get on the other side of this event, oh my goodness, you can see that next growth cycle is the writing's on the walls. It's coming, everybody. So get ready. I thought this was such a cool study. Anyway, that's what Shane and I were doing in our drunken stupor last night. It was a lot of fun. And that's all about the... and actually, you should throw on maybe the midpoint of this next cycle to sort of see where the end of the big equity run should come. Shane? My hunch is probably comes right around that 2032, 2033 kind of scenario. And interesting enough, look at these numbers on the Dow, right? I don't know whether we get up here. I think we're probably going to get up and tag this kind of trend line up here. But look at these numbers. They are just staggering. So, we may actually see like just absolutely insane stock market prices that we can't even comprehend today, because the purchasing power of this thing that's actually these things are priced in has been completely diluted. And we're in the process of hitting that reset button and getting ready for the next growth cycle. So anyway, I've talked lots about that. It's kind of a fun chart. And it's definitely a study that I'll be watching closely over the next 5-10 years. Really cool stuff, Shane. Very impressive. All right, so I've been kind of blibber-blabbing away here for a while. I hope you guys all sort of get my general message of what I'm sort of seeing in the market. Like I said, the general message I have for the next probably month or so. How far does this go? Right, midpoint of the cycle comes in October 30th, and it's interesting how like that Brexit event is supposed to be like October 31st. And they always say that, Halloween, markets always love to pivot through Halloween and all that kind of craziness. And then that sort of conversation, buy when it snows, sell when it goes. So I'm not thinking like risk-wise, I'm looking for too much uppy until we get through the month of October. This is going to be a bit of a slog here. And I also see that in crypto. I don't see any reason to be thinking bull. Probably I'll finish off the video with this image because I think it's just so telling. At any given point in time in the market, and I remember I used to, and I tell students this story all the time, but I remember I used to work at this prop firm, and we have our sort of morning meetings, and everybody's sort of chatting in the lounge, and Brian, like an idiot, of course, he comes on and he goes, oh yeah, actually, I think I figured this thing out. I think it's actually pretty simple. And everybody's like, oh yeah, oh this should be good. All right, yeah, okay, Beamish, what do you got to say? And I said, well, it's this game's actually really simple. All you got to do is just figure out is the market ranging or is it trending, and then just simply apply the appropriate strategy. And everybody's like, duh, this is the grand conclusion. Which of course is, it's amusing, but ironically enough, this game is actually really this simple. And so this chart I thought was a really good sort of, comparison. What does a trending market look like versus what does a ranging market look like? And remember that markets like to range 70 to 80% of the time. They don't trend very often. So that's why when we get into these crazy rip-roaring big bull market trends, we almost get sort of lulled into sort of this is the way it normally is. But in reality, this is the way it normally is this range kind of conversation. This is actually what normally happens. And we only trend about, maybe 20, 30% of the time, probably closer to that 20. So, if this was going to be a trend, then what I would want to see is I want to see sort of continuation patterns. And that's where this AB equals CD kind of concept really helps. So we had a whole bunch of lows and things were looking pretty positive there, for trend continuation. We've highlighted that this was a really, really important battle level here. And unfortunately, the bulls just didn't step up when they needed to. And actually, like on the actual chart, I think you can actually really see it really clearly. It was all right through here, right? And I remember distinctly talking to you guys about this, saying, if we can somehow break this trend line and then W on the other side of this trend line, I think we're actually back into a bull market. So you can actually pinpoint exactly where the bull failed. And I think it was right in this area here. This was the magic point where if this was going to be a trend continuation, the bull had to step up here. And they just didn't show up. So, the market itself actually made it fairly clear right through here. And then, of course, we got like those big, $1.2 billion sell orders kind of stuff. My hunch is Mr. $1.2 billion guy, he probably was seeing this exact same thing and just said, fuck it, we're not breaking out. Get me the hell out of there. The fact that we've busted through all of these lows, unfortunately for trend followers, means, I need to have 3 higher lows to risk against. So I've got sort of a half decent chance that the floor is in the market. So with us breaking these lows, I have to reset my count back at 1. We're back at, basically the beginning. As long as 66% of the range has not been given back, then we could technically still be in this trend following phase. But as I sort of said earlier, it's going to take a lot of time now. I mean, look how long it took to form these 3 lows here. This is going to take a lot of time to clean up, base, and start climbing back up again. And really, last year's analogy is exactly the same thing. You could make an argument that there was a pretty good shot of like a bullish turn if we could come out of this consolidation right here and W out the other side of it. We didn't. We M'd out, and you can see on the other side of the right, how long did it actually take for this thing to bottom and then actually start turning back up in earnest? And that took 140 days. So that's kind of what I'm expecting, right? I think, proportionately, this consolidation, it'd be really interesting to do like almost like Marat. You're here, aren't you? Um, Marat's really big on pie. I thought I saw Marat in here. Yeah, there he is. Um, it would be really interesting to do sort of a proportional study of the size of this consolidation versus the size of this consolidation. Um, I have a funny feeling that this is actually proportional to this. There is some sort of mathematical relationship, and that's the one thing I absolutely love about Bitcoin and crypto is because it is very computer driven, algorithm driven, stuff like that. I actually think it has to follow things like fib ratios and mathematical ratios, pi, and Marat's love of pi. Um, I think it actually has to follow it actually pretty closely. So I wonder if there's some sort of what's the word I'm thinking here? Like proportional scale. There's some sort of proportional scale to this. But anyway, I'm blabbing now. So, if we just simply go on a one to one, but I don't think it is. I think it's something different. But if we go just simply one to one, then if we took this long to turn back up previously, what are we thinking now? Well, that's like February. And interesting too how I do like that kind of thinking because I like the idea of the market bottoming through tax loss selling season. Buy when it snows, sell when it goes, put in our ultimate base and start turning back up into the new year, getting ready for next year's halvening event. And so, probably the best sort of thing to finish off our conversation here today is, this kind of thinking. This would take us this dump here, interestingly enough, and that's sort of just doing a mimic of what this price action looks like. This dump down here into 4,000 or 5,000 happens right around the beginning of February. I don't know if we have to follow along this path. Interesting how, if we just carbon copy this price action, notice we dumped, then we rallied right back up against previous lows and consolidate some more, and then one more final dump, just sort of finish off the remaining bulls. And all that does is it just takes us right back down against this original trend line support, back down into sort of, line in the sand. 78.6 is the bottom of reload zones, all that kind of talk. I think that's completely realistic. And also, too, like if we look at this triangle as sort of a very natural correction, what I've often found is that the market often likes to correct about 2/3 the apex of these triangles, which would on balance, that's pretty close. That pivot sort of the beginning of 2021 to set us up for that BTC halvening event. That's still marching along very politely. And then sort of juxtapose all that with Brian and his crazy triangles. If we actually look at Bitcoin from a fib spiral perspective, and this is another reason why I don't know whether I'm too excited about getting too bearish right here, because we are basically right at this triangle's bottom here. I don't know if I've drawn these levels correctly. I seem to remember that was like 8501 or something. What's this high? Yeah, 13,868.44, so that's right. And this low. What number is this? Looks about right. 13,868.44. 31.35, 31.28.89, 28.89, and that says 28.89. All right, well, let's see what this number says. All right, that number says 84.98.67. I've often seen these silly triangles. They'll come down and then they'll flirt with the bottom, and then we put in like a little scoobity and then zip up, kind of like what you see here. So I don't. My hunch is that we hold the bottom of this triangle and work our way back up into here. And then, interestingly enough, this comes to an apex right around that sort of February, March time period as well. So I'm sort of thinking that this has got to be our path. And frankly speaking, I would be really surprised if Bitcoin actually dipped much further lower here. But we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. So that's sort of the start, or the state of Bitcoin in Brian's perspective. I think that image right there sums it up pretty nicely for me. So, okay, I have no idea whether you guys got any value out of today's offering. I'm still nursing a, what do you call it? A tincture? I can't get it. Can you spell that word for me, Shane? Shane last night, it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Shane's last night was it, do you want a beer or do you want a shot? And I'm like, well, why not both? So we got slightly polluted. Feel a little bit delicate. I have to get myself all pretty. Oh, there it is. Tincture. Right? Tincture. Whatever the hell that is. So I have to get myself all pretty for the boy here shortly. Long and short of it here, I hope you guys got some value out of this. I'm trying to make a positive difference in this world. It's interesting how the Coinigy people are all now getting excited for doing the Coinigy shows again. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't seen the Coinigy shows before, do yourself a favor. I'll post the links to the old shows that we used to do. And actually we did them for quite a while. I don't know whether, yeah, here we are. So you can see us going back. So there's Alex. Alex is one of the lead devs for Ubic. I don't know whether Ubic is even still alive or not. But if you're not familiar with the shows that we used to do on Coinigy, there's one of the principles of Coinigy, Will. And I don't know whether we got a picture of Dav in here, but Dav likes to be part of the show as well. There's Dav. So be sure to watch out for that. It turns out that the OGers getting excited about doing Coinigy shows again, which I think is maybe a little bit of an anecdotal tell that I think we're getting pretty close to this bottom here in altcoin land. So, maybe brush up on your bat shows. Be sure to watch out for that. I think we're going to do one this Wednesday. Sort of maybe an old reunion tour, what you've been doing over the past year or two. Great to see that resources on the TRI site are getting filled out again, and it doesn't surprise me looking at the breadth data that we got one hell of a breadth signal up top here. I've been talking about, building short positions in the stock market anyway. Crypto, of course, I think is to a certain degree a risk-on asset. So if I'm feeling like I'm heavy in the stock market for the next little while, it shouldn't surprise you that probably feeling heavy for crypto for the next little while as well. And pleased to report that Grim was really under the weather there last week. But coming back like a rock star today. Feedback from students is they're very happy with how things are going. We did a special piece on that fear-greed cycle.
last weekend's Broiler Chicken Show. So any level oneers still have any doubts, you had the opportunity to post questions here. Feel free to ask. If you have any further questions on the site, we're here to help. Level 2ers and level 3ers are just sort of rocking it, filling out their tool belts and their Pro Trader workstations. And level 3ers now, you guys are now officially into harmonics. So I want to see lots of harmonic charts from you guys. Things are just humming along on TRI site. So very pleased to see. We're taking advantage of this developer cycle. It looks like we're probably about 80-90% of the way through the crypto correction. You saw that Verge chart. I think that's the type of environment that we're in right now. So get out there and hunt those good fundamental stories. Give me a reason why your coin is going to rock and roll. And then if we can juxtapose, you saw what Litecoin did this past spring with its halving event. You saw how Ethereum acted on, tethers moving from the Omni chain to the Ethereum chain. Fundamental reasons are definitely driving this market. So give me fundamental ideas. You want to post you guys watching on YouTube, hey Brian, this project has got this really interesting fundamental driver ahead of us. Let's go take a look at a price chart of it, right? And if anything, also too, for that Coinigy show, when you see the tweets go up, be sure to follow me at CRI Investor on Twitter. You can follow the Coinigy guys, Alex, Dav, whatever. You should see those tweets go out. Just be sure to post your altcoin idea and symbol, and we'll take a look at it through that as well. So, okay, why don't we leave it at that? Have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and bye for now.